big result for the Impact.
Welcome to Footy Talks. Footy Talks. Footy Talks, your Thursday footy fix. Luke, Stephen and KJ with you as always. And today,
for me, it would be great to come back to Toronto. Even if I can come back as a player, it will be great because I will love it.
They're moving back to Toronto and they want to move back into the house. So within the next month and a half, I think I got to find a new house.
My German's terrible. But basically that translates to space interpreter. And I thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I can do. And what he does a lot of time at Bayern is he just finds space on the field and runs into it. And it's about the timing and the connection with his teammates. And that's just what I felt like I did all year. There was space all over the field for me, and I just enjoyed it.
I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe because I sleep a little bit on the plane.
But as soon as I looked up and saw the trajectory, I knew it was a goal. And then from that moment on, I kind of just... I lose my mind a little bit and don't know what to do, so I ran to the bench.
hello everyone. Welcome to Footy Talks. Luke, Stephen and KJ with you as always. Footy Talks presented by Benjamin Moore. At the business end of the MLS season, couple of stumbles for TFC the last two games with that loss in Philadelphia. And then last night against New York City, they are back in action this coming Sunday against Inter Miami on TSN. We'll have it for you, of course, the broadcast. And we will be joined by former Canadian international Kaylin Kyle, who is part of the Miami broadcast, to talk a bit about that. And also about the appointment of Bev Priestman as the new Canada national team head coach. Plus, Peter Vermees, the longest-serving head coach in Major League Soccer. They qualified for the playoffs last night, Sporting Kansas City. 9 times he's done it in the 11 years that he's been in charge. So we'll get into Peter Vermees' mind a little bit. Looking forward to that. I wonder if it's just coincidence, boys, that the top 3 teams in both conferences, Kansas City in the West right now, Peter Vermees has been there 11 years. And then the next 2 longest-serving head coaches are Jim Curtin, first in the East, and Greg Vanney, second in the East. Sometimes patience pays off.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think there's obviously a year where there's a lot of interchanging and a lot of instability in our lives, that sometimes stability is important to be found somewhere else. And I think that these organizations, Stevie, have stability from the top. I'm certainly looking forward to tapping into the mind of Peter Vermees. I've always enjoyed my conversations with him. I learn every week from him, and whenever I listen to him in his press conferences. But I think with Peter and Jim, and obviously we talk a lot about TFC. There's almost that sense where these coaches will tell you that the rest of the group is almost policing themselves a little bit, and their work is not necessarily easier, but there's a lot of less fires they have to put out on a daily basis, I think.
Yeah, when you have that time to build continuity, it really helps. You can see the benefit of that. And I think that when you look at the 3 guys, that they're all people who have, an integral role in the fabric of the football club, don't they? Jim came through the system at Philadelphia. He knows the youngsters in there. He knows the way it works. He knows the club inside out. Peter Vermees has built Kansas City. Can't wait to speak to him. One of the most impressive managers in MLS, managers, coaches, whatever you want to call him. He does everything. And of course, Greg Vanney has a large say as the technical director of TFC and through the academy and how the TFC2 look, and obviously into the first team. So, no coincidence there for me, guys. It's a continuity and allowing somebody to build something, giving them time, trusting in their processes, which eventually will become successful. You see the benefits in the end, and TFC have had more money than the other 2, I have to say, so it was maybe a little bit quicker for them to get there, but Philadelphia and Kansas City are 2 favourites, as are TFC, to win MLS Cup, in my opinion.
Well, we saw Philly firsthand at the weekend, of course. TFC had an off night. There's no doubt about that. When you look at last night's game against New York City FC, Greg Vanney trying to piece together a lineup at this stage of the season when probably, KJ, I think it's fair to say if this was a playoff game and everybody was fit, you're looking at least 5 players missing last night that would be in the starting lineup, maybe even 6 when you look at Mavinga, Osorio, Delgado, Akinola, Altidore, Piatti, maybe even Auro. You're up to 7 there. Of those players, and we chatted a little bit about this on the broadcast last night, is there one that you think they missed more than any other last night?
Jonathan Osorio for me. I think for me is the spirit of the team, and without him, the spirit is a little bit less than it needs to be. Is such a progressive thinker in terms of how he reads the game, and I think his intelligence. I think it brings everybody else up, and the way he's forward thinking now, plays the ball quicker, and I think that what we've seen with Jonathan Osorio over the last 3 years is the key elements to the consistency there. That every week he doesn't have a bad game, and he looked a bit fatigued and tired before the end of that stretch of run when he played more minutes than anybody before he got hurt. But I think Stevie is at the point now where, like all good players, they make other players better. And I know some people will probably shout at the screen and say Mavinga, and I could listen to that argument as well, because I certainly think that Chris Mavinga brings a lot more calmness to Omar Gonzalez that doesn't exist when Lawrence Simon's playing next to him. And that they're a different partnership. But I just think that without Jonathan Osorio, the engine of the team is definitely impacted.
Yeah, I agree with you, KJ. I think he's really took on that leadership role and mantle this season, and he brings such an assuredness to the way that they play, the way that they play successfully when they move the ball quickly. He's really good at that. He knows when to play quick. He knows when to get on the ball. He's showed that he can play that deep midfield role. We always felt he was a more attacking player, but now we're seeing the sort of responsibility to play in that Michael Bradley base of the midfield kind of role. And I think that his omission the last few games has really been glaring. I think he calms his team down as well. He's a quiet leader, of course. He's not a big shouter, not a big rah-rah guy, but his confidence is on the ceiling. He's a guy who's slowly but surely built up that responsibility and that role of his. So I agree with you there. I mean, in terms of the makeup of the team as well, Mavinga's pace at the back allows them to squeeze 10 yards higher.
Yeah.
And Akinola's pace at the front allows a team to get more stretch because they have to respect the fact that it can run in behind. And the one thing I would say is that when you're building a roster or a squad, and, we're going to get a guy on who's done it better than anybody in Peter Vermees, but to me, you have a style and identity in the way that you want to play. And then you try and have, a top 11, a starting 11, and then an understudy 11 who, to me, need to fit the same profile. And that's a problem for TFC right now. You could argue Altidore and Akinola are the top two. Even a Chara, who's out of a long-term thing, would be in that main striker role. But Patrick Mullins, no disrespect to him, just doesn't do that same thing, does he, guys? And so then Pozzuelo's a bit squashed, and, there's no that space that you see when Akinola's playing. So I think the pace of both Mavinga and Akinola are critical as well. And we could go through every team in MLS. If we take out 4 or 5 starters, they're nowhere near the side that we expect. So fair play and respect to that fact that they're not playing with their best team, but it's still been quite alarming the last couple of games.
But is there... I mean, you've probably been in teams, Stevie, where you have great runs and then stumble, and then it's about how quickly you can get back to normal after you make those mistakes, after you have those bad games. And Greg Vanney's talked about this being a real league of momentum in Major League Soccer. So when you've got these players potentially coming back in for the playoffs, and the fact that there's a gap between the end of the season and then towards the start of the playoffs, TFC could be getting somewhat near fully healthy by the time the playoffs start. Are you able just to pick things back up again from where you left off, or how big a role does that momentum play if you stumble right at the end of the season?
I think it plays a huge role. We've seen it in MLS. Momentum is very, very important. I don't think that when you've been out 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe even longer, you can't just step back in and get up to playoff speed right away. So that's going to be an issue. Maybe the 2-week international gap is going to be a benefit for TFC because everybody's going to be maybe a little bit rusty. It's not like any team comes in with that momentum, really. So I think that'll play in their hands. But, it's the way that they lost these 2 games. I know they weren't at it against Philadelphia, but they were really outplayed and they were really outran and kind of they didn't have the energy of Philadelphia Union. And then, to go into that after a 5-0, you're going to go into the next game with that kind of grit and determination. We saw an early booking. Morrow got a booking for quite a nasty challenge. You expect things like that. But then, when it comes after that, KJ, and you look at the body of the 90 minutes, they got completely outplayed again, didn't they? And so, again, it was through energy and movement. And that would be a concern for me, that there actually been 2 games where they've just been outplayed by better teams, maybe on the night, maybe just generally. But yeah, if I'm Greg Vanney, I'm kind of worried about that, and I'm looking forward to get my guys back to try and get my true identity back.
Yeah, just a couple of things to pick up on Luke's point. We've heard from this group themselves that have answered that question a number of times. Michael Bradley, who's been one of the consistent, members throughout this entire era, has said back to when they got beat by Montreal in that 1-game playoff, that they learned you can't just pick it up and switch it on like a light. So you have to carry momentum going. So that's speaking from them. They know that themselves. So they will be keen to get that going and find some kind of momentum or positivity of reference points in the next couple of games, regardless of who gets back. And I also think this. I think when we had Greg Vanney on the show a couple of weeks ago, he was very candid when he was asked about what kind of things they need to talk about in terms of crossing the T's and dotting the I's for the contract going forward. And Greg Vanney has every right to defend his team right now. We all know what they're going through and how long away they've been, and mentally and physically where they are at that point. And he's certainly done that. And he was on the front foot last night with the media. But if I'm him, and I'm certainly not him, but I think I know Greg a little bit to know that what he's looking at in terms of evaluating the team. I would also use that game last night, not necessarily the Philadelphia one, as clear evidence for me to say to the team and the people who are in charge of recruitment, to say this is the kind of thing that we need to look at going forward and what we need more of. We need more of these kind of players. And there's, for me, I've said it time and time again. Maybe this is a credit to him. Again, a lot of the games they played with 10 men because they've got no presence up front, and they just lack dynamic width so many times in this team. And they don't buy those players, technicians. And so people say, okay, we've got no Piatti. I understand that, but all the other players who would come back, they don't have that profile. And that's what the profile at New York City had last night. They've got players all over the field who are technicians who are comfortable to create the triangles and the overlaps and the passing in possession and the quickness and the movement and the tempo. And TFC are a phenomenal team when everyone's back, but the identity is that they're a working team. They've got a lot of efficient players who work and cover ground. They don't have a lot of players that can take on players and create space. And that's why Pozuelo, for me, is the clear MVP, because he is that one player different in the team. And I think if they're going to go to another level, Greg Vanney will look at what other teams are doing and go, we need some more of these guys if we're going to continue to that kind of success.
Lots more to get into with regards to TFC, and the current game that they're preparing for is Miami on Sunday at Rentschler Field in East Hartford, Connecticut. And someone who knows an awful lot about Miami is former Canadian international Kaylin Kyle, who joins us on the show. I could go through your bio, Kaylin, but it would take far too long with all the things.
I would love for you too, though. Please be my guest.
It's great to see you. Hope you're well. Obviously, a lot nicer situation than we are up here in Toronto. I'm sure it's warm. You spend most days on the beach. It's, not a bad life down there for you guys.
I can't complain. If you do hear a 2-year-old screaming, he just came back in the house. I apologize. Our house is absolutely chaotic. There's soccer balls flying everywhere. I feel like there's picture frames broken because our son's a lunatic. So is my husband. So I'm going to have 3 boys in the house here soon, which is crazy. But yeah, I can't complain about Miami. The weather here is insane. I mean, like you said, there's beaches everywhere. I haven't been to one in ages because obviously this whole COVID thing, it's like I'm going crazy with it. I'm like ready to go and like get my suntan on, have a few margaritas once this baby's born. But until then, I'm housebound. Okay, well, we'll get into Miami in a moment in terms of the team, because you do a lot with the club there and the broadcasts for the Miami games. But I wanted to ask you, it's perfect timing. You were coming on the show anyway. And then fortunately for us, Canada Soccer decides to appoint a new head coach for the national team yesterday with Bev Priestman coming in. I said on SportsCenter yesterday, I think it's a really shrewd move. I love the hire anyway, but especially at this moment in time when she doesn't know when she's going to be able to get the players together for the first time. She's got 9 months to prepare for the Olympics. And Kaylin, she's coming into a situation where she knows the landscape. She knows Canada Soccer. She knows a lot of the players. She's worked with them before. Seems like a pretty good hire right now. Would you agree? Yeah, I think it is a great hire due to the circumstances. Now, if the circumstances were different, I would have loved to have seen a different hire. And that's no disrespect to Bev Priestman, because she's first and foremost a very great person. And then she's a great tactician. And she's learned a lot of it from, obviously, John Herdman. She was the assistant coach there for a little while. But it's interesting, then decided to go to England. She actually was just given the U18 job last week, was going to take them into the U17 World Cup next year. So at least these girls, like I'm thinking as a player aspect, they've all played under her. They know what to expect. They know her personality. They know her playing style. And she's not going to go too far off the page of what John had brought in and what Kenneth had brought in. So that's great for the girls, like you just said, going into an Olympic Games with, I think, 7 months? It's not a long time to prep. They don't know when they can go back into a camp. There's a lot of girls that aren't even playing at the moment due to COVID and due to not going into the NWSL Fall Series. I mean, Desiree Scott's been training at home in Winnipeg. So it's a weird time for all these girls. So it's nice that they have the simplicity of they know what they're getting. Now, if it was different times, I would have loved to seen a big change, just because I think that's what this women's team needed. They had John Herdman come in and lay the landscape for this team. Obviously, we're seeing it on the men's side now, just the tactical side of it, the tactical brains, the tactical knowledge of it, and just what it takes to be a professional athlete. Now we've seen a lot of these girls deciding to go overseas instead of maybe going to the NWSL and finding a lot of success, like a Janine Becky that needed to grow. Adriana Leon that was in and out of the lineup, in and out of camps, and now she's absolutely killing it at West Ham. So everyone knows I'm an Adriana Leon fan, so I don't need to say too much about that. But it's a good hire for Canada Soccer at this time, I will say.
Kaylin, you talk about a tactic strength. Is that, would you say, the main strength? What are the other ones, do you think, that elevated her to the top of the list when Canada Soccer were looking at the potential candidates to make sure that they knew what was a significant strength here that will help them?
I think familiarity. How do you pronounce that?
Familiarity.
Yeah, familiar with what you said. Okay,
yeah.
It's baby brain and lack of sleep over here.
You're fine with us, trust me.
We have to translate for Stevie 99.9% of the time. So
I love it. But I think just for the girls, having someone come in that they know the playing style, they know that she might add maybe a different platform here and there, but everything will be pretty much kind of the same. She'll probably bring in the same girls, the same structure with that. So I do like what Canada Soccer has done there. And then again, it's been a weird time for the women's team. Like, I'm kind of glad I retired when I did. I was lucky enough, obviously, to have some incredible coaches. I did enjoy playing under Carolina Marache. I will say that, because it was a different kind of training module that I've never seen. And then when John Herdman came in, he's gotten me to where I am today. I wouldn't be in media because I didn't really understand the game in the detail that he has shown us. So I owe a lot of that to him. And then just like I'm having some old school coaches come in and really give you a shot, like, you need to get your shit going. So, can I swear on this show? Sorry. So I've had a lot of like different coaches along the way. So Canada Soccer knows what they're doing. They know what they needed to bring in at this moment, at this time, especially when they don't know with what camps are coming around. But I think too that these girls, they know her and they know what to expect from her, which is what they need. They didn't need another big change out of left field again.
Is that maybe going to be our biggest challenge then, Kaylin? The fact that she, she's an assistant coach before, she's sort of friendly, mid-30s. I think Kristian Sinclair's 3 years older than her.
Yeah.
So she has that friendly relationship with the players, but she needs to change that, doesn't she? Is she that type of personality? Will she pivot a little, or will she just go for the sort of the more of the arm round the shoulder kind of approach when it comes to her management?
And that's the thing. It's a huge difference going from assistant coach to a head coaching, especially of a national team. Now, her resume has been building. I mean, she's been in Canada. She's done the Excel programs from U15 to I think 23. So she knows kind of how Canadians react to certain conversations in certain direction. She's worked with these girls, so she knows what to expect. But she will have to shift in how she comes into this camp. There's no doubt about that. You can't come in and be just friendly with these players. You need to have that balance of a good man manager and then a good tactical manager as well. And I think that's what she can bring. Now, can she do it and can she apply it is a different story, because it's extremely difficult to do, especially at the highest level, especially with the limited amount of time that she's going to have with these girls. But I do wish her the best, because I've met her a few times in passing and she just seems phenomenal. I never was able to be coached by her, but I do wish her the best. And I would probably see maybe a Rianne Wilkinson coming in to help assist her maybe, or just be something within part of that team, because Rianne really adds that, like, I'm not even going to say it, that scariness that I feel like you need to just balance out a Bev.
She's scary. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, she is. But she's in the best possible way.
Good cop, bad cop.
It is. It's very good cop, bad cop. But I think she would be fantastic to bring in and just help balance this team. I mean, these girls have been through so much, especially with everything that's going on in the world. The change of management, I mean, twice. John Herdman going to the men's team was a big shock. So they definitely have the talent, but they just need to build on it. But again, it's such a weird year. I'm literally so happy I retired when I did.
Well, things working out for you now as well with not only doing the Miami games, but also with beIN Sports Ligue 1 games, a lot of broadcasting from the Liga as well. So congrats on everything that you're doing down there with that. But we wanted to talk to you about Miami because you can give us a window into what the TFC opponent is going to be like on Sunday night. And the club as a whole, you've been in there, you've had the opportunity to meet people within the club, ownership, that sort of thing. They've done things very differently to Nashville, the two clubs that are coming in right now.
Yeah.
Is it as star-studded as it appears from the outside down there?
It's weird. It is, but it doesn't feel like that, if that makes sense. Like the first time, I've met David Beckham before just because the football worlds always collide, but the first time they were shooting something, it was him and Gary Neville. They were shooting something for BBC down on the pitch. And I was just sitting there like watching and I was like, this is really cool. Like pretty amazing people. And they came and just sat beside me and we're just like chatting like, oh, you're Adrian Heath's daughter-in-law. How is that being part of the family? And I was like, how do you know me? Like, so they make it feel very family orientated. And then obviously bringing in a player of Higuain to the team. Obviously I don't speak Spanish, so we don't really cross paths like a lot with interviews and stuff like that, but everyone's just so nice. No one has that big superstar personality where it's just like, I'm too good for the MLS, I'm too good for these players, I'm too good for this franchise. And I think that was one thing that Paul McDonough really wanted to do when he brought players in. He wanted to make it feel family-based because Miami has been dying for a professional team. And because of all the crap that they've gone through trying just to get a franchise here, I mean, having to move the team to Fort Lauderdale because they couldn't find land here in Miami and they're trying to work on that. But going to the stadium for the first time and it being a temporary stadium, you guys, I kid you not, this place is absolutely phenomenal. And they're doing things properly. I mean, they have all their youth teams and youth programming, all using the same fields, all eating out of the same cantina, all using the same physiotherapists, obviously at different times in the first team. But imagine being a player that's like 13, 14, 15 and walking in for your training session at 1 p.m. in the afternoon and Higuain's leaving the cantina being like, hey, have a good session. Like they've done things properly where it gives these young kids a dream to be like, I can do this. I want to play for Inter Miami. So that's been really incredible. And then obviously I'm on the other side of it now. So it's a bit different. I didn't really know how I was going to be accepted, especially as a female, you know, in the male dominated sport. And it's so cool to see, I feel like the shift in mindset from not only players, but management, people like David Beckham being like, oh, you actually know your shit. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, I know what I'm on about. So they just like really, they're so supportive. Even like when they found out I'm pregnant, they're like, whatever you need, if you need to shoot from home, like here's the best hospital, the best doctors. Like it really does feel like a family. I'm truly, honestly, so lucky to be working for a franchise like this. Obviously, because I'm a Canadian through and through. I love my TSC. I love my Vancouver Whitecaps. Sorry, Montreal. But those are my two Canadian teams. So yeah, no, it's really cool to be part of a franchise here that is really accepting and loves diversity and loves having females be part of the growing game here in North America.
It's great to hear. Keep flying that Canadian flag for us down there as well. What's impressed you and your broadcast team? I know you work with the great Ray Hudson as well. What's impressed you the most about Diego Alonso? Because obviously, two-time CONCACAF Champions League winner. This guy has got an amazing resume. He's also got a great wardrobe as well. This guy's as cool as they come.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's like Slick Rick. He always looks spot on. It's like pissing down rain, and he's like suited and booted, like not a bother in the world.
Oh, this guy is cool. What's impressed you the most about him tactically and in your dealings with him?
Yeah, I did an interview with him. He's learning English at the moment, so it was like a Spanglish type interview. But he just seems like a really cool guy, and talking to a lot of the players, just really good man manager. And then you look at his tactical ability. Now, it hasn't really gone. You look at the results, and you look where Inter Miami's sitting, and you kind of look at some games where you're like, that they played so bad, and then they'll have such a good game. But what I like that Diego Alonso has done is he's literally come in with a team that he has not picked. I mean, he got signed in December. Most of the players were signed by then. He's come in, had 2 games, then COVID hit. So then there was a massive break. He was probably thinking, what did I sign myself up for? Then comes back in, has to go into an MLS bubble, and only gets a short amount of time to train these players. And he didn't even have most of his DPs. I mean, Blaise Matuidi came in halfway through season. You have Higuain that came in halfway through season. His brother just got signed late last week. So you have all these players that you're trying to work with that you don't know much about because most of them you haven't signed. And what I like that he's done is he hasn't really stuck to that typical, 4-3-3 coming into the MLS. He's shifted. So some games you see him playing 3-back. Some games you see him switching to that 5-4 with 4 through the midfield, 5 through the back. So it's been interesting to see what he's been doing and then how he's been using the personnel, because most of the time you would see the same starting 11 just for consistency with a franchise, and he's been using a lot of the players. Again, results haven't been going the way that they wanted it. They came off that huge 2-1 win versus Orlando, and then last night's game was terrible, to say in the nicest way possible. So they definitely have a long way to go, but I think a lot of people are saying, can he get the job done? I think he can with a normal year. I know I keep saying that, but it's just such a weird year, and especially for a franchise team coming in. I honestly, I feel bad for the players, and I feel bad for Diego Alonso that's come into a situation which it's been completely out of his control.
And are you sensing some frustration in the franchise or Diego Alonso, Kaelin, or do you feel like this is a long-term project because of the type of year it's been, that even if, God forbid for Miami that they miss the playoffs, is he going to get another chance to continue that next season? And
that's the thing here at Inter Miami is they want to win. And when you have an owner of David Beckham that's won everything that you can win, he's played on some of the biggest teams in the world. He wants to win, and he wants to win nice football as well. So it's that balancing thing. I would never say anything ill about anyone, but if you're not winning, how much time do you realistically have at a franchise that has big superstars behind it? Because at the end of the day, it never gets blamed on the players. It always gets blamed on the manager. It's always the first person out is the manager, and then they bring in maybe some players with the new manager that they want them. So I think this year is definitely a learning year, and they're building and they're growing and they're developing and they're bringing in players that they want to be, that spine of the team. And we've seen it with Leandro Gonzalez-Perez in that back line, with Blaise Matuidi. He's started to find his way. He started off a little bit slow in the MLS because, like you guys have all seen, these European superstars come in and think the MLS is a retirement league or this is going to be easy, and it's not, because it's such a fast-paced style of football, a lot of counterattacking, transitional phases. So it's been nice to see him get his feet under him, because he's been brilliant the last 4 or 5 games. But yeah, you're starting to see a little bit of the change in the players, and then obviously last night we lost half our back line, so we're facing you guys on the weekend with 3 defenders missing, which will be interesting to say the least.
So you mentioned Adrian Heath before, of course.
Yeah.
We won't put in TFC in Vancouver to this, because that just makes it too hard for you as a former player of those. But it's an MLS Cup, and it's into Miami against Minnesota United.
Oh.
Who are you pulling for there?
I don't want to get kicked out of the family, so Minnesota. I've had to jump to Everton. I have to be an Everton supporter now, because when Liverpool won everything last year, I was just doing it to kind of stir the pot in the family. And it really annoyed Adrian. Adrian is my biggest supporter, and he's very old school English, but he never gives anyone compliments. He never will call you and be like, great show or great game, not even to his own son. So I remember I called, I don't know what game it was, and he called me, and I was like, oh my God, Adrian Heath's calling me? I get nervous when he calls me. I know that sounds so weird to you, but I was like, hello? Thinking he accidentally butt dialed me. He's like, hey, I just wanted to say you did fantastic, really, really good stuff. Absolutely, love watching you. You've been brilliant. A lot of people have been saying it. And I was like, have you had a few gin and tonics? And he was like, no, I'm being honest. Yeah. And I know them. So it's really nice to hear. And obviously I'm so lucky, because I have loads of people in my family that are in football. Obviously my sister-in-law, her husband played for United. Now, I don't know who he's with right now. That's so bad. I don't even know. And then his twin brother's obviously with Everton at the moment. So I have to be an Everton supporter. MLS, I mean, Inter Miami do pay my paycheck.
Yeah.
But I still would have to support. I'd have to support Minnesota.
Really?
I would. I would. I know that sounds
family.
bad, but I have to.
Okay, well, we'll see if it comes down to that, and a big decision for you if it does. Listen, Kaylin, it's fantastic to catch up with you. Thanks so much for taking the time today and your insight on the new head coach of the women's national team, as well as Inter Miami. We're looking forward to TFC against Miami on Sunday Night Live on TSN. And maybe we'll see you up here sometime soon when the borders open again. And obviously, you were a big part of TSN's Women's World Cup coverage last year. It was great to be involved with that with you as well. So congrats on everything you're doing, and thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Kaylin.
Kaylin Kyle with us on Footy Talks. Miami at TFC coming up live across the TSN network on Sunday night. In fact, I think it's on TSN4 on Sunday. It's a triple header because Montreal also in action and the Whitecaps as well later on in the day. Footy Talks presented by Benjamin Moore with you every Thursday at lunchtime, 12:30 Eastern time. Do let us know where you're with us from, listening or watching today around the world. Great to have you with us, and great to welcome on our next guest as well. Peter Vermees is the longest serving head coach in Major League Soccer right now. Kansas City last night to getting a win at Cincinnati to make it into the playoffs. And it just at this point is a regular thing since you've been in charge, Peter. Great to have you with us. You're back in the playoffs after missing out last year. The longest serving head coach in Major League Soccer. We talked a little bit about this earlier on the show. Probably no coincidence, Peter, that yourself, Jim Curtin and Greg Vanney are the three longest serving head coaches in the league. And right now, the top three teams in terms of your top of the West and those guys the top of the Eastern Conference. Patience sometimes pays off, and being able to build something over a period of time.
The key word in there is time. And in sports, nobody likes the word time, right? Fans don't like it. Owners don't like it. You guys don't like it sometimes as well. So it's that proverbial word that nobody wants to hear, but unfortunately it does take time to build a club and to, winning doesn't just happen, right? It takes time. I mean, I think that you can build a team very quickly and make it a one-hit wonder, but I don't think you can sustain consistency over time if you haven't built in a culture and it does. I mean, it is patience and it's time but you have to see growth. You have to see positive steps in front of you, and that's where I think belief comes in. And then obviously, if you win a little bit, then everybody gets a little more confidence, and then maybe you get a little more time. The next time there's a little bit of a low, and so but it is a constant battle.
Peter, great to see you again. We were all really excited when you accepted the decision to come on the show. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. We could chat with you for hours about leadership. I want to ask you.
It's better when we're doing it in person, though.
Well, yeah, I know. Trust me. We all wish that was the case. As I said to you before, it's great to see your team at the top again. I think of your team. I think you're a true team, unlike any other team in Major League Soccer. And with a team with a real humble edge, I think. When you put that team together over the years that you've had, maybe you can just share with us and the viewers what it takes for you. What are those key core values that you have in place to put that together? Because I know that's been a massive fabric of what Sporting Kansas City stands for. Well,
we have four core values here at the club. The first is that the team is always first, not the individual. And that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say four of them. They all sound good. The question is that can you stay committed, and when the tough moment comes where you have to actually make an example, do you follow through? Right. And I think that's the key to it, right? So team is always first. There's definitely the individual. The team's not built around the individual, nor is the individual ever going to rule the club. The second is that you have to have intelligence. And I mean, I'm not asking guys to perform brain surgery on, Thursday morning. I'm asking them that if we implement, a game plan and they have a role to play in that game plan, can they actually put that in a game and actually help us achieve it, right? The next is work ethic. If you don't have work ethic and you don't come here and demonstrate that, or when you come here you don't get it, then you won't be here long. And then the final piece is a winning mentality. And that sounds, again, good, but it's more broken down into pursuing excellence in everything you do. Like, I don't care. An example would be is things have changed, right? Since I played in this country, especially, every day the guys get breakfast and lunch. Everything is there for them. But they also have a responsibility in the facility every day that they're not going to leave it maybe like their apartment is. If their apartment is a mess, I really don't care. That's their choice in their everyday life. But when they come here, they have to be a great actor or imposter to make sure that they live up to the standards that have been set here by the club. And it's always interesting because I have guys that have been in this club for 10, 11, 12 years, and they've maintained that and helped us build that culture and that standard. There's other guys that have been here for, 3 or 4 years, and they did a great job in those 3 or 4 years of faking it. But what happened was the real person started to come out, and I had to move them on. Mm-hmm. And it's not because they're bad guys. It's just that if you can't maintain that, or you can't evolve with the club, then you're just not going to be here that long. The last thing I'll say on the work ethic piece is also in a really important way to look at, and that is, I can say work ethic, or I can use another word, and that's competing. Because if you go into, say, Verizon, right? Verizon, the cellular company, and you go into their workforce, they have people in their marketing department. If you go in there, they're not competing against each other every day, right? If today I just got off the training field, and if I tell a guy and I say, hey, I need you to go on the end line, and I need you to go from the goal line to the 6, back to the goal line, to the 18, back to the 6, and back to midfield, and you need to do it in 15 seconds. That's a task I asked the player to do. If you want to say it, I'm his boss, he has to do it. But the second that I send 3 guys over to the line and tell them to do that, they're now competing. And there's a huge difference in that world. And what I won't accept is that you cannot compete maybe one day, but you sure as hell better not do it 2 days in a row.
Right. Because
that's our business. Our profession is competing. And if you don't come to compete every day, that's a real problem. And those are the court, but again, that stuff takes a long time to set up. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry I'm answering this long, but I'll say this.
Fascinating.
When I took over as the interim head coach in 2009, there's 10 games left in the season, and I'll never forget this. So I put in with the guys to play every day 5v2, right? And we're playing 5v2, and I'm watching these guys, and I'm first day, and I'm shaking my head. And then I'm watching them as the week goes, and I'm shaking my head even more, because what drove me nuts was when any team that I ever played on, it's about your tenure with the club, it's about your presence within the team. And in that time period, I was bringing in guys left and right to try out guys and see how they fit in. If I would have been on the team and the manager was bringing in guys to try out, and this is what was happening. So the guys were coming in and they were trying out, and guys on the team who had been here for years, they're going in the middle to start the 5v2. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, if that was me, I'd be like, hey, get in the middle, right? And if the guy even made a decent pass and I'm like, you go in, I'm not going. Like, that's the presence in the team. We didn't have that. And so it was really, really difficult when the next year I was full-time as the manager. It took like 6 months to determine whether or not some of the guys that were here and some of the guys that were new brought in, it took 6 months to find out if they actually were the right guys for the club. Because when you don't have a culture and you don't have a style of play, what are you evaluating? What are you measuring against? And so that's why I think you need time, especially in sports, in a club, to kind of build that culture and that idea. Because then you have a measuring stick to say, okay, I can now I can bring a guy in and I can tell in a month, and I say in a month because you got to give somebody some time to to catch on to what you're doing. But you can also see, even though it may not be working, you can see if it's catching on. You can see, right? You can see if it's catching on. So
it's a fascinating answer, Peter. It's one of the reasons why I admire you more than any other coach in North America. And your answer about core values and people, I guess, is really intriguing to me, because once you have the right pieces, and I'm thinking of guys like Matt Basler and obviously Graham Zusi, and the continuity that you managed to build and the quality teams through the years, is it easier to bring in Johnny Russell, a Pulido, or whoever who joins the team, and right away these guys almost do your job for you because you've built that up over the years?
Yeah, it is. It's actually a really good question. When you bring those guys in, it's funny because I do this all the time. Look, I was very fortunate, right? I played in 3 different countries at a time when American players, everybody thought we actually played the American football game, not, the European football game, right? And so playing in 3 different countries, there's some really important things that I learned as a player, which anytime especially when I bring foreign players in, it's a really important aspect. And you probably have this experience that you can, if you didn't, you can say you didn't. I just don't know, but I'll tell you what I do. Whenever I bring a foreign player in, the first day he always comes into my office before training. I sit down with them and I have a blank piece of paper. And obviously I talked about the 4 core values. But I always draw this little diagram. And so I draw 2 circles. And one is the world and the other is the USA, is America, right? Major League Soccer, if you will. And I tell them, when you are a player that plays anywhere else in the world except for the United States, so when you go in any other club in the world, and I'm sure you can attest to this, new guy comes, what everybody and what so now the circle is the team, like say in Europe, right? It's a team in Europe. And what it is I draw a little stick figure on the outside of the circle. And I say, that's you trying to get into here. And I point, I make an arrow into the middle of the circle. And because it's my feeling, and again, 3 different countries, is that when you go to wherever, Spain, for example, and I went to Spain, the guys want to know this first and foremost. I'm a foreign player. They want to see that I can play the game first and foremost. I better be one of the better players in the team, or I better be doing something of my job really well. That's the first piece. They want to know that I'm going to work my ass off every day. And then they're hoping, this is the last one, they're hoping that I'm a decent guy. If I can really play and I work my ass off, I can be an ass, right? And get away with it. But the other 2, if you don't do those, you're never entering the circle. What's interesting for me about the United States is, and I think it has a lot to do with, and I would say probably Canada is probably the same exact way, is that because the culture between the 2 countries is very similar, is that when the player comes in to these countries, you're automatically put into the circle. You're like family immediately. Yeah. When you sign, you're on. But what happens is if you don't show that you can play, if you don't work hard and you're not a decent guy, once they kick you out of the circle, it's really hard to get back in. And I think that is something that when a player understands, because that means that in his first day, he better come out the right way in that first day and not be an ass, because then that's going to be hard for him to kind of recover. And I think that's where the difference is.
Yeah, and do we need more of that nastiness here in the US and Canada in terms of what it's like in Europe? They look at you and they say, you're coming from our place. They push you away until you prove that you're a good teammate, you're a good player. Do we need more of that here, do you think?
I agree. I agree to this point. I think the difference is that when you're over in all the other countries, there is an external pressure, media, it's high level, right? So you have that. The other is you also have it within your team, and that is, and we can have this discussion. Back line, I finished, I played the second half of my career the back line. If I'm playing in training or in a game, and I'm a central defender, and I tell the back line, hey, we're up, right? Hey, up, everybody's got to get out. And right back, left back, I don't care. The guy next, doesn't matter. Somebody's not up. I'm going off on them. Okay. I'm going off on them because I'm not losing because you're lazy, right? But today, there's very few players that do that. And I can't speak for Europe. I mean, look, I watch a lot of games. You can see that there's a level of professionalism. There are guys that are still very boisterous on the back line, but it's not as many as it used to be. And that part is missing in the game. And I always tell this, I always say it like this. When you point your finger at somebody on the field, right, and you're a player, I don't care where you play. I played as a forward as well, so I use this as a great example. I'm playing in a game, and whether it's in training or in practice, training or a game, and I yell at a guy, and I say, hey, serve the ball better. The second that I do that, I open myself up because I know what I did. If a guy says to me, he's like, hey, make a better pass with the ball, or, keep it about whatever I did wrong, right? At that second, that guy's on my team. I don't care if it's a game or it's training. I'm now watching him for the rest of the 90 minutes because the one time he screws up, I'm coming after him like nobody's business. I'm waiting for him to screw up so I can get even with him again. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we don't have enough of that in the game anymore. And I think that's what that is why I think you see a lot of inconsistency in the game from team to team to team. It's one of the reasons why I think that Man United struggles because they don't have the Roy Keanes of the world anymore there. They don't have that.
I don't know if you remember, we showed that clip a few weeks ago, Stevie, of you taking Diwali out off at the chest at Kansas City. Remember with Baldomero Toledo sent it?
I'm sure
he still says he got the ball, by the way.
It's the way it goes. I mean, honestly, that's the game, and we miss that so much. Look, when I played in this league, the first years, I'll never forget. I was playing in a game, and there was a rookie kid came on the field, and he was running around, and he was doing the old what some of these young guys do, right? They make somebody, and then they kind of hoot and holler after he did it. And I put my hand on my hand and go, I'm going to kill this kid, right? I remember going to the ref because it was a different time. I went to the ref and I said, listen, I'm going to lay this kid out. I said more than that. I said, I'm going to lay him out. You better not give me a card because he needs to learn a lesson coming into the league. And you can do that. You can't do that. And that's missed in the game for me personally.
We talked about you getting back into the playoffs this year. Last year was just an anomaly in terms of all the things that you had to deal with, the injuries. TFC went through something very similar with the Champions League campaign after making the two finals. They had that 2018 campaign. But with everything that you talked about, with the values that you have, with the way you've built the club, were you always sure that was just going to be a blip because of the circumstances, because of the foundations that you had got, and that you would be able to respond again and return to business as normal this year? Or were there any doubts creeping in last year at all?
I would be lying to you if I didn't say that you sit back and you start to question yourself and things that you do. But there's something that I've always believed in, and I didn't get far from this, and that is, I think where the game has changed is that it used to be you played on teams most of the time where, whether it's the manager, the sporting director, whoever, they assembled a group of guys that were very good players. And they basically just got them confident, go out in the field, and I'm going to live off of your quality, right? Where the game's changed is there's truly ideas of how you want to play. And so I still think there's a lot of teams that kind of roll the ball out. What I think the problem with that is that they rely on the players that are quality of being in form or being really good that day. And I don't think that gets you results when you need them. Whereas if you have a real way of playing with a purpose, right? And then you can tweak your team a little bit here and there, depending on the opponent and what you can find where you can take advantages of. Then what happens is when you have to go into a game late in the season and get a result, you can go and do it with purpose and a real plan to do it. Whereas you're not just hoping all the guys are going to be really good that day and they're in good form. Mm-hmm. I would say the same, and I think that gets you results, gets you more positive results over time. And so taking what you just asked me, I had to give faith and trust to what we've done over a long period of time over here and said, we have to stick with who we are. I've never had blinders on, and said this is the only way. I continue every year to try to evolve as a manager, but also as a club, and also in the way that we play. But sometimes we, as myself and the rest of the staff, sometimes we also can get, we can almost like we can get paralyzed by too much analysis. And so it was about getting the group back to where we thought they would be physically. That was the first piece. And it was sticking with who we are. And I think, it definitely makes you feel good when you know that it works, that you didn't lose yourself and panic and change everything just because of one bad situation. But I'll tell you, there's times when you question it for sure.
Fascinating stuff. Peter, I could talk to you all day about present day, but I want to tap into your brilliant storytelling times as well. I want to ask you about Italia 90, if that's okay.
Sure.
Because it's a tournament we talk a lot about here. We certainly talked a lot about it during
World
lockdown.
Cup ever, KJ.
It's a great World Cup for us. We all grew up in the UK, obviously, and it had special times there. And you played in that tournament. It was a massive tournament for the United States. I know, watching back some of the games you played against, Baresi, Maldini, and Bergami in that game. What was that like as a whole experience for you, and how often do you think about that moment?
Yeah, I got a great story for you. So at that time, I'm the only player playing in Europe at that time. I was playing in the Eerste Division in Holland. I was playing for FC Volendam, and we actually really did well that year. It was the season right before the World Cup, and we did really well, whatever. So I'm the only guy playing over there. And we have a bunch of guys that are just basically living in California or living in the United States all over the place, and they're just playing games whenever they can. And so I remember we get on a corner kick, and I look at one of the guys on my team, and I'm like, I got Baresi. And then he's like, I got Scalacci. And all of a sudden we're looking at it like, we don't got these guys. I mean, who the hell are? And it's like Baresi going, shoot, Vermes has me. Oh, yeah, they don't even know who the hell we are. So, what I would say to you is the best thing was, there's so many little things that happen, but this is the difference. So we lose our first game against the Czech Republic 5-1. We get destroyed. We get a red card. Eric Rinaldi gets a red card. Shocking. The next day, we're training. I'm sorry. The day before, it's like 3 days later, we're playing. We're going to play. How about this? We're going to play Italy, in Italia 90 in Rome. We just got smoked, right? So the day before the game, we're playing a small-sided game, but the numbers are big. So when I say we're playing a small field, tight field, 2 goals, we're playing like 10v10. And one of the guys on our team nutmegs another player, and as the player is turning around and the guy goes through his legs, he turns, and when he gets to the ball on the other side, he nutmegs him again the other way. And the guy comes with both legs from behind to kill him. And when that happens, for whatever reason, it was right in front of a goal. And I'm telling you, 20 guys are going at it. It's a fight. It's a full-blown fight inside the goal. Guys are in the net. I mean, fists are flying, everything. It gets broken up. Coach says, everybody get some water. Everybody comes back on. We get back into the game. The game kicks off, and here comes the president, the vice president, the treasurer, the secretary, all the board members of the U.S. Soccer Federation walking in at that moment. They just missed the fight. They have no idea what transpired. They have no idea. So then we go to the game the next day, and I can't tell you how many. I think I played. Who knows? They keep taking them away. By some point, I'll never have played for the national team. But I think I played like 70 times for U.S. or 60 something. They keep taking them away. I don't know how many times I played in this country in a game. I never played for an American crowd. It was always better for the opponent. Didn't matter who we played against. We were driving into the stadium, and the street leading into the stadium was full of people supporting us with red, white, and blue painted on their face. I never even saw that. So the amazing environment to go into that stadium was incredible. And I'll never forget. So right before, as you do as a player, you go out, you go in the stadium, you go out, go look at the field. The field was unbelievable. And I remember walking out to the middle, and I laid down on the kickoff spot. I laid down looking up, and there's probably about 500 people that they, for some reason, let in early to the stadium. It's only about 500. The place was already rocking with 500 people. And I remember coming out, walking out, the red, white, and green flags. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was surreal. The game, the environment. It was amazing. We lost the game 1-0.
Yep.
And as you may know, I had a chance. But we didn't deserve to tie that game. And I still believe that's the reason why I didn't score. Because I put the ball between Zenga's legs. And it was trickling in, and Bergomi came and kicked it off the line. And it was like one of those things where we didn't deserve it. But I'll tell you this, if I score that, I'm playing it for AC Milan that year.
What an experience. What a story as well, Peter. Where do you think they are now? I mean, have they ever had a better host of young talent, the US national team, than where they are at the moment? Some of these guys are truly on the verge of being world-class football players, aren't they?
I totally agree. And I think the other thing is that they're playing in great pressured environments. What is going to be the challenge is that if the playing for your country, that meaning of that, if they can bring sort of the quality and the experience they're getting right now, and then they have that internal feeling of playing for your country and representing your country, and they can put that out on the field and play as a team, they could really do some damage. There is some incredible talent. It's really interesting to see, and I've been a big supporter, and maybe I'm the guy kind of out in front being the cheerleader and saying that I don't think that MLS, and I say MLS across the board, I don't think MLS is getting enough credit for how quickly we have been able to put in a pro player pathway and start actually developing talent. I mean, you have clubs in Europe that have been doing it for 60, 70 years, and they're no better than when they first started. Where you look across the board in Major League Soccer, there's an incredible advancement in that area, and a lot of these kids are coming from that place. It's pretty rewarding to see that happen.
And your training ground's a big example of that, Peter, isn't it? Tell us your part in that. It's an absolutely phenomenal facility that you share with the US Federation, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, that was a concept that we actually put together back in 2000. We actually made the first presentation for this facility in 2011 to US Soccer. It's amazing. And so we always felt here that our biggest void in the country was not players. It was coaching development, coaching development. And we needed better coaches, from top to bottom, bottom to top. We needed just better coaches. And so we put together this training facility that, a third of it is dedicated to US Soccer and their entire educational program for obviously producing better coaches. So it's an incredible place. The facility is unbelievable. Technology, it has everything available to them. Fields dedicated to them. We have a place that we call the Educational Pavilion, where it's a building that's in between two fields that they use, and they can do everything from recording the coach to the video, and they can actually walk right into a room and show it instantaneously, evaluate it, and then go out in the field and fix it and redo it. I mean, it's pretty impressive. It really is. And I do think that we're getting better in that area as well.
Peter, really appreciate your time today. We could talk to you for hours, but I appreciate that you've got a busy schedule. Thank you so much for being with us on Footy Talks today, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks.
My pleasure, guys. Always great talking to you.
Always a pleasure. Thanks.
Have a great day.
Ramirez, head coach of Sporting Kansas City, top of the Western Conference right now. Just fascinating insight. And, you know, we've been doing this show since March when the lockdown started. We've had some great TFC guests along the way. But also part of what we wanted to do when we talked about this show is to give people an insight into the people across the league that we get to talk to on a regular basis, the likes of Brian Smetzer and Jim Curtin that we've had on, Ben Olsen when he was with DC, Mark DeSantos, and now Peter Vermees as well. The level of knowledge within the league in the head coaching positions just give people some kind of a window into how other clubs are run as well. And what an incredible run it's been for Peter Vermees and for Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah, well, it's so difficult to even know where to start when you talk to a guy like that. You know, it's like you literally, you know, I don't say that to every guest. And every time I spoke to him, I spoke to him this year in LA, which feels like 5 years ago, but it really was still 2020. You know, I could tap into his mind so much. You know, if you're into that psychology stuff, like I know we are, and you listen to other shows with the leadership and what they bring, you know, I got so much time for that gentleman. You know, he's an outstanding. First of all, an outstanding human being. You know, the integrity that he sets right away. You know, you're not going to be, you know, there's just no fakeness there at all. It's all genuine. And, you know, he reminds me a lot about you know, he didn't say this because I didn't want to put words in his mouth, but, you know, he's coaching men who play football. He's not coaching footballers who later become men. It's a big difference, Stevie. You know what I mean? And you can see that he cares for every single person. And as I said to him off the top, that's why I wanted to talk to him about it, because I'm so glad he shared that with our listeners and viewers, because they can get a taste of what we get to taste, that, you know, that the leadership qualities that this guy's got are second to none across the league.
Yeah, my blood's flowing, guys. I just love that man. I just think he's absolutely incredible, the work that he does, the way that he goes about it. He's a proper man, isn't he? You know, and you said it best, KJ. You know, he deals with human beings first and foremost. And then he brings in his soccer identity in towards the people that they are. And he just spoke to us about, you know, finding out about a guy 2-3 years later, and then he's done, he's gone. Because if he's not fitting in to the culture and the identity that he's building, he can't be a Sporting Kansas City player. And I think that's, you know, credit to the character that he has. He's phenomenal. Could talk to him all day. He's such an impressive figure. He could coach anywhere in the world. I really believe that. I think
agree.
Who just gets it. He gets people. Football, anything is about leading people, is about getting to know your guys, you know, and he was even like sort of embarrassed to call himself a boss, wasn't he there, you know, and he is their boss, but he does it in such a humane way that they build someone significant. I think he's phenomenal. He's part in building that facility. This is a $75 million facility. It's my son's been with TFC Academy, and he talks about it, you know, every couple of weeks. He brings it up. It's so impressive, and he was so integral to having that happen. So what he did for US soccer on the field, Italian 90, this kind of stuff, and now what he's doing through Kansas City and the way they're bringing players through, I think it's just phenomenal. And don't rule them out. They're a great team this year. They could certainly win the MLS Cup with him in charge.
And how he reinvents himself too. That's the other thing that you touched on, Luke, with your question, which is one that this is obviously the longest term manager by a distance.
Yeah.
You know, we see right now that, you know, and I know the European game is a little bit different in terms of the pressure on, but now, you know, what we are, Guardiola's 5th season, and it feels like it's coming to the end, and that's the elite level. You know, these guys, we write in the cycles all the time, a 3-year cycle for a guy at a club, you know, 1.5-year average. And here's this guy, you know, he's gone into his 2nd decade, and you can hear the enthusiasm, and he's still genuine about it. There's no concern about that. And, you know, I think when Peter Vermees leaves Sporting Kansas City, it'll be because he wants to leave, not because they want him to leave.
I'm glad you said that, KJ. They'll never sack him. Never, you know, he'll leave on his own terms when he decides he wants another challenge, or he's took them as far as he can. Maybe he moves upstairs at whatever point, but there's no way you sack a guy like that. You're fortunate to have him, and you keep him for as long as you can, and you take every piece of information and skill that he has out of him.
And he won as a player as well with Kansas City in the old days. And also, you talk about him being there as the coach from mid-August of 2009, but he was technical director there before that as well. So this is someone that knows this organization through and through. I picked this up today from my basement. as a mark of him coming on the show today, Peter Vermees, a water bottle.
Oh, there you go.
Kansas City Wizards there in 2009.
Awesome.
This is the first game I ever broadcast on television in Canada. Was the opening game of the 09 season. TFC went down to what was then Community America Ballpark.
Baseball.
The baseball. You had to run over the mound to take the throw in. And the broadcast booth, it was the first game we'd done, myself and Jason DeVos. The broadcast booth was actually an old boxcar that just had been cut out with like some kind of a chainsaw or something, perched on top of the hill, people sitting behind or having picnics behind the goal.
Brilliant.
Just to see where that club has come from then to now being able to have the chance to see their new stadium. And as you see there, the training facility, it's absolutely incredible. I got two new things. One is that this week. The other one is this.
Before you show your next one, Luke, just to put your point on that is that the story you described there was MLS dying.
Yeah.
The story that we now see is MLS thriving.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And that's why when people talk about the expansion sides coming in, it's not just about that. It's about sides like Kansas City being able to reinvent themselves and maintain a place and relevance in Major League Soccer at the top end. The other thing I found this week is this.
I want to say, if I had one more game in MLS, it'd be at Children's Mercy Park. It's what a place isn't it? You know, the atmosphere. The first time I saw a tunnel club where you went through in the mountains, everybody does it now. Man City, Tottenham Hotspur, TFC, and just a great place to play football, and all built by, well, mainly by that man, to be honest.
When Howard Webb was with us for the World Cup, I managed to get signed one of his red cards, right?
After one of those, it's a yellow card.
FIFA red card.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to keep it now. And then every time Stevie makes some kind of a point or deserves like that 2 foot under volley, give him a couple of those.
Peter said that was okay, that challenge. Did you hear his comment? He said that he felt that was fine, you know?
Yeah, I don't recall that being the comment he made in the post-game press conference after that.
I think he's you're his kind of player, mate.
We got to wrap up in a few minutes, but before we do, let's turn attention back to TFC and the game coming this weekend against Miami at Rentschler Field. If you're Greg Vanney and you don't have a lot of time between now and Sunday after what you saw on Wednesday night, and you're hoping maybe you can get Jonathan Osorio back, maybe Ayo Akinola, some talk as well. Chris Mavinga could be available. How much do you risk these players in terms of the 2 games you have remaining on the regular season at risk of them maybe missing out the playoffs? Or do you have to make sure, first and foremost, that these guys are going to be good moving forward? With a playoff spot already locked up and with Columbus stumbling a little bit, probably the top 2, whatever happens, is going to be TFC's final position here, KJ.
Oh, yeah. Look, I don't think any risk comes into any discussion. If the discussion is risk, then they don't play. It's for me, it's clear, as simple as that. You know, you want to change the momentum. We talked about that earlier. You need to turn that back. I don't think they're going to have as challenges chasing shadows as they did against Philly and New York, against Inter Miami, by the way. So significantly already, you put the same team out there. So I think they'll be a little bit better. But no, there should be no risk at all. Look, you know, make no mistake about it. Even if they lose the last 4 games, if they go on and win MLS Cup, no one's going to talk about these games. So, you know, look, I do think there's direct correlation between some of the form that you can end the season, as we talked about off the top, to the playoffs. So I think you'd like to get them back, Stevie. But if there's any kind of risk, and if particularly Jonathan Osorio, who wasn't even on the bench, then I'd be surprised if he's playing. But for someone like Chris Mavinga, if he's available to play, then get him out there. I think that it's quite as simple as that.
Yeah, I said it last night, and I agree with your comment, KJ. It's as simple as that. Are they fit? They play. If they're not fit, then you don't risk them. Not at this point. It's not MLS Cup final or Eastern Conference final, you know, where you're saying 70% Mavinga's playing, Osorio's playing. It's not that situation. So, you know, you go with what you've got. I do feel if they're ready, then they should get a run out. They should get some minutes. But I think TFC need to go in the attack here. You know, I want to see Nelson start. I want to see him given a chance to go and be as positive as he was when he came on as substitute the other night. I want to see them get the ball forward a little bit quicker, be a bit more direct, keep the ball further away from their goal. It sounds like an old school mentality, but just try and create a tempo and an energy into the game that we saw in the last 15 minutes, right from the start. So, you know, maybe throw the playbook away a little bit in the terms that they like to build it up nice and slow and methodical, get it into Miami's half, make them defend right from the start of the game. And I think that'll create a sort of mindset that'll be positive for TFC and will allow them to go on with whatever 11 that they pick to win the game quite comfortably.
And Jaden Nelson was impactful, wasn't he, Stevie, when he came on?
He was great. He had energy. He went by a couple of guys. He looked like his eyes lit up and he saw this as a chance to like become the hero. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for him, but I like that mentality. I like to see a young guy who's positive. I was a bit critical of him against Cincinnati, where I felt when he got 1v1s, he always tried to play it safe and keep the ball and felt like that was the way to go. He threw everything out the window yesterday and he went, I'm going to go and attack this game. I'm going to try and be the hero. I would unleash him on Sunday night and say, go on, son, do the same thing. Have a go at them, KJ, and try and take the game to Miami.
Yeah, and I think it's that mindset, right? So why is it in the past when he's come on in games that are tight, why has he looked conservative? Mm-hmm. And why is he looking different when he's chasing a game? So that's the question I would be looking at evaluating Jaden Nelson. I want you to play the way you played last night, the way you play in a 0-0 game at the start of the game. Yeah, because that's what youth does. That's what youth does in all sports around the world. The exuberance, the fresh innocence about them. They're fearless. So obviously he's going to go out there with a little bit of a game plan and instruction from his coaching staff saying, you have to track X. You have to be aware defensively of your responsibility. But that should not cloud his mind to do what he does best. Yeah. Particularly in game 22 of a regular season that, let's be honest, does it matter or does it really not matter in the terms of his career? It's a massive opportunity for him to go out there. Right now, he's a nobody. He's a somebody on our show, but one day he's going to be somebody. And one day in his mind, he wants to be Alphonso Davies. That's pressure. This isn't pressure. This is just go out there and play right now in a regular season game. Just go out and show yourself, Stevie. That's what I would want to do from all these young players.
Yeah, two things for me. Simplify it and give him freedom. That's what I would do. Just simplify it, give the guy a couple of things, just a couple of pointers before he goes out there, and then tell him every time you get 1v1, every time you're in the last third, take it at the defender, go at it. It doesn't matter. He tackles you, he wins the ball. I want to see you do that again and again and again. And I think that when he plays like that, he's so exciting. You get on the edge of your seat, don't you? You see a player, you think, wow, this guy's got something. Now, I get it. Tactically, he's going to have to learn, and in time, he's going to have to play a role. But at this moment, with the exuberance that he has, what TFC need on Sunday is that kind of player. So I would, take the shackles off and say, on you go. Go and show us what you're all about.
And just finally, we talked to Kalen earlier in the show to give us insight in Miami, but we also saw Miami just a couple of weeks ago against Montreal, Steve, and Montreal played really well that night. Miami have been up and down, but there's no doubt they have the talent in terms of the designated players they have there as well. From what you saw with the way they played against Montreal at Red Bull Arena, what can TFC take as a way of trying to get at Miami and making sure that Miami don't get into a rhythm here?
Yeah, they're very beatable. We saw that in the game at Red Bull Arena. But, one thing I would say is key is they have Pizarro back, the Mexican international, improves them considerably. Higuain will be in the team. Matuidi, you start to see some real quality there. So I think you have to be careful of that. Lewis Morgan, Scottish international, has probably been their best player this season. He's another one who you have to watch. But they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable defensively. They could play a 4, they could play a 3. But you can really get at them. You can get some space in between the lines and cause some problems. So I would, like I said, I wouldn't encourage them onto me, KJ, if I was TFC. I would try and get the ball into their half a little bit quicker and ask them to defend consistently, because I don't think that they have the capabilities of being like maybe a Nashville or a New York City defensively. They're not that team, are they? They're more about trying to play in your half when they get the ball.
Yeah, definitely. They're definitely vulnerable, and they'll give you chances to score. And the other thing is they're quite look, they've got dangerous threats, but they're quite a predictable attacking unit too. There's not a lot of different ways they play. They're quite direct. I think even with direct balls into Higuain, I think the centre-backs of TFC will enjoy that. There's not a lot of concern about being behind them and worrying about getting in behind it. Like you said, Morgan maybe from a wide area, but there's not a lot of that they've seen over the last couple of games. So a completely different profile of a match, and one that I think will suit TFC.
TFC against Inter Miami from Rentschler Field in East Hartford, Connecticut, coming your way on TSN4 on Sunday night. Do join us for the broadcast for that one. 1 year ago tomorrow that TFC won against Atlanta in the Eastern Conference Final at Mercedes-Benz Stadium with that Nick DeLeon goal, which means, guys, it is 1 year ago today that we were last at one of the greatest food places in North America, KJ's Roasters for that banquet. And remember when Stevie ordered like 17 different sides, and they keep bringing out these different bowls of food for Stevie to try and get through. He's sweating as he's trying to eat.
He couldn't walk for about 6 hours after it.
Took his goodie bag back with him to the hotel.
Listen, I've been missing it so much. I even went on their website the other day to check out the menu and just have a look at that. Absolutely.
It actually fills my heart as somebody who's very close to that city and lived there for a bit, that I have introduced that wonderful restaurant to you. And that makes me a massive smile on my face. But yeah, Roasters on Lenox Road, Atlanta. Boy, oh boy, what a place.
Great show today. Great guests, Kaylin and Peter Vermees. Thanks to them for coming on. And thanks to you for being there watching Footy Talks.
Thank you,